Part 1. This video is my opinion. The following are items that show up in both the Ramsey case and the crime of Miss Jean Brodie, book, play, and movie. My comments are highlighted red. The rest is from the book. Sandy Stranger had a feeling at the time that they were supposed to be the happiest days of her life, and on her 10th birthday she said so to her best friend Jenny Gray, who had been asked to tea at Sandy's house. The specialty of the feast was pineapple cubes with cream. The specialty of the day was that they were left to themselves. To Sandy, the unfamiliar pineapple had the authentic taste and appearance of happiness, and she focused her small eyes closely on the pale gold cubes before she scooped them up in her spoon. Both girls saved the cream to the last, then ate it in spoonfuls. Pineapple was found in JonBenet's proximal intestine. A bowl with pineapple and milk with a spoon next to a glass with a tea bag in it were found in the home. "Oh dear," said Rose out loud one day when they were settled to essay writing. "I can't remember how you spell possession. Are there two S's or?" Possession was misspelled in the Ransom note. It was impossible to know how much Brodie planned by deliberation or how much she worked by instinct alone. However, in this, the first test of her strength, she had the victory. The ransom note was signed off Victory, SBTC. These were placed in a vase beneath the portrait upon a lectern which also held an open Bible. An open Bible was found in the library of the home. Having confided her finds to Sandy, they had embarked on a course of research which they called Research, piecing together clues from remembered conversations illicitly overheard and passages from big dictionaries. A dictionary, dog-eared on one corner, was found in the home. Who opened the window? A window in the basement was found open. Monica, whose face was becoming very red, swung the attaché case which held her books. An attaché is mentioned in the ransom note. She, Miss Brodie, looked older than that. She was suffering from an internal growth. Patsy had ovarian cancer. She, Miss Brodie, added, "Art is greater than science." "I think Miss Brodie is more interested in art, ma'am," said Sandy. "Pictures and drawings, I mean," said Sandy. "Miss Brodie told us so. Music is an interest to her, but art is a passion." Miss Brodie said, "I, Miss Brodie, do indeed," said Miss Brodie. "But like is hardly the word. Pictorial art is my passion." Patsy painted with oils and acrylics. The ransom note begins, "We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction." Individualism is stressed in the book, and the Brodie set is characterized as being separate from the rest of the student body. Phrases like the team spirit are always employed to cut across individualism, love, and personal loyalty, she had said. Sandy thought this might be an attempt to keep the Brodie set together at the expense of the newly glimpsed individuality of its members. It was the Brodie set to which Joyce Emily most desired to attach herself, perceiving their individualism. "I, Miss Mackay, am happy to see you are devoted to Miss Brodie. Your loyalty is due to the school rather than to any one individual." They, the Brodie set, had to learn spirit and had no team spirit and very little in common with each other outside their continuing friendship with Jean Brodie. There was always a difference about Miss Brodie's girls. In the last 2 years, Miss Mackay, may say a marked difference. The lack of team spirit alone, the fact that the Brodie set preferred golf to hockey or netball, if they preferred anything at all, were enough to set them apart. It was impossible for them to escape from the Brodie set because they were the Brodie set in the eyes of the school. In Death of Innocence, Patsy goes on for several paragraphs how the color purple played a role in her Christmas 1996. Patsy, had noticed a large roll of beautiful purple velvet ribbon on one of the shelves. I usually decorated with gold, red, or green, but on that day the color purple particularly caught my eye. Why not? I thought. Purple would be a different look this year. The family won't expect it, and it could be beautiful with the ribbon in hand. I started back upstairs to trim the tree. I took the roll into the living room and started interweaving the ribbon through the branches. I had unconsciously woven death into the fabric of our Christmas celebration. An assurance had been handed to our family with the presence of the color purple. Purple did have a place after all. In the book, purple is mentioned several times. The students' uniforms were purple. In the movie, Miss Brodie wears a series of purple-shaded outfits. And in the portrait that Lloyd does of her, she is wearing a purple dress. The characteristics of Miss Brodie and the members of the set also match Patsy's characteristics and JonBenet's as well. Sandy Stranger was famous for her vowel words. Welcome, come and recite for us, please. Jenny Gray, she was going to be an actress. Patsy did dramatic recitation in the talent portion of her pageants. Rose, being addicted to cinema, the Ransom note is filled with words and phrases from books and movies. Sandy for psychology. Patsy speaks of her subconscious and her dreams in Death of Innocence. You, Eunice, are an Ariel. Patsy associated the angel theme with JonBenet her entire life. Here's one of Eunice in her harlequin outfit. One of JonBenet's pageant costumes was a harlequin outfit. Rose Stanley was famous for sex, her blonde, short hair. Rose, who was famous for her sex appeal. Rose will be a great lover. She is above the common moral code. It does not apply to her. JonBenet was dressed provocatively in her pageants and had suggestive expressions coached into her. Her hair was lightened by Patsy. The fusion of identity between Patsy and her daughter has been discussed by investigators of the case. The theme of identity overlap and even fusion is part of the crime of Miss Jean Brodie. Teddy Lloyd's passion for Jean Brodie was greatly in evidence in all the portraits he did of the various members of the Brodie set. He did them in a group during one summer term, wearing their Panama hats, each in a different way. Each had adoring in a magical transformation a different Jean Brodie under the forms of Rose, Sandy, Jenny, Mary, Monica, and Eunice. By the time their friendships with Miss Brodie was 7 years standing, it had worked itself into their bones so that they could not break away without, as it were, splitting their bones to do so. Sandy looked back at her companions and understood them as a body with Miss Brodie for the head. She perceived herself, the absent Jenny, the ever-blamed Mary, Rose, Eunice, and Monica, all in a frightening little moment, in unified compliance to the destiny of Miss Brodie, as if God had willed them to birth for that purpose. As she turned, Miss Brodie put her arm around Rose's shoulder and thanked Mr. Lloyd for his help, as if she and Rose were one. In the CNN interview, Patsy said, paraphrasing, "We believe there are two people that know what happened, the killer and someone that person may have confided in," from the book. So she confided according to what seemed expedient at the time, a phrase used by Muriel Spark in her books quite a bit, and also it shows up in the Ransom note. So she confided according to what seemed expedient at the time, and was in fact now on the lookout for a girl amongst her set in whom she could confide entirely. Of necessity there had to be just one, but two would be dangerous. The words confide, confidant, confidence are used at least 10 times in the book. There are other similarities between the writing of the Ransom note and Muriel Spark's writing in general. In the prime of Miss Jean Brodie, Spark used the phrase "at this time" or "at that time" repeatedly. At this time is used in the Ransom note. Initialisms are capitalized and punctuated with periods in the note. This is exactly what Spark does in her work. She even capitalized and punctuated TV. Spark's last novel was about a kidnapping that really did not happen. My point in all of this is that I think Patsy had a personality identity disorder that resulted in her using JonBenet as an object in her private psychotic fantasy that revolved around an imagined relationship with a supernatural being as a compensation for lack of parental recognition as a child. In order to secure her fantasy, the threat of having the object attain an identity of its own through maturation had to be stopped. By ending the life of the child, Patsy removed the threat and had complete freedom to imagine her as an angel in heaven with a God awaiting a mother's arrival. The evidence for this type of psychosis is in the mythic content of Patsy's behavior, as noted by the excessive Christmas decorations, the content of her contribution to Death of Innocence, and the symbolic references in the ransom note, and what was done to the child's body, the staging, posing, while clothing with a single star on the shirt, etc. Further evidence of a psychosis is the obvious ties to literature. This often happens with psychotics, as in Chapman with The Catcher in the Rye, Hinckley with Taxi Driver, McVeigh with The Turner Diaries, Klebold and Harris with The Basketball Diaries. As the psychotic succumbs to the unconscious, dream content takes over their lives and myth becomes reality for them. I think in Patsy's case, she identified with the storyline and characteristics of the primal Miss Jean Brodie as they matched her own life's history, having been raised by a pathological narcissistic mother. Sandy Stranger's efforts to disengage from the effect of the narcissistic Brodie matched Patsy's need to disengage from the effect of the narcissistic Nedra Pa. Patsy never did achieve this in real life, but transferred the process via fantasy to the object JonBenet. There are other interesting similarities between Patsy and Spark's writings and Spark personally, such as Patsy's out-of-place description of her clothing in Death of Innocence and Brodie's out-of-place description of her wardrobe to the students in The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. Spark and Patsy were both admitted Francophiles. Both Brodie and Patsy had a rota of denominations. Brodie displaced her sexual urges by proxy to Rose, and Patsy used JonBenet as a sexual object in the Pageants and apparently violated her digitally. Brodie was a descendant of a man who had died on a gibbet of his own devising. A gibbet was a device used to display criminals after execution. I think JonBenet was subdued by strangulation. The evidence for this is the lower bruising on the neck, lower front, followed by the head blow and repositioning the cord to its final place for a private viewing by the perp, Patsy. I think Patsy's personality identity disorder was first played out with Spark and her writings. Spark's work was spawned by a contest that demanded a release to the imagination. Spark won the contest and went on to write humorous, dark commentaries on the human condition, many of which were filled with crime. The content of the ransom note having to do with crime books and movies is noted by investigators. At least one true crime book was said to be found in the home, and the Ramseys themselves said their favorite profiler was John Douglas. Who has a favorite profiler? I have included a printout of my thread on the Forums for Justice and the role of the Psalms in Patsy's crime. There are words, phrases, and movies in the Psalms that are common to the crime. In The Crime of Miss Jean Brodie is a theme common to the Psalms. The gang who oppose me shall not succeed. Miss Brodie. The subject of insight is brought up in The Crime of Miss Jean Brodie. Monica will get her B.Sc. with honors, I have no doubt, but she has no spiritual insight, and of course that's why she's ... Nothing infuriates people more than their own lack of spiritual insight. You, Sandy, have got insight. Perhaps not spiritual, but you're a deep one, and Rose has got instinct. She rises above the common moral code. It does not apply to her. This is a fact which is not expedient for anyone to hear about who is not endowed with insight. If interest you, forsooth, a girl with a mind, a girl with insight, Miss Brodie. Insight is a quality of Sandy Stranger. I think Patsy committed the crime and wrote the ransom note in a regression to childlike persona in the image of Sandy. Twice in the book, Brodie says to Sandy, one day you'll go too far, and in the movie shouts to Sandy, assassin, assassin, as she learns her disloyalty, as Brodie learns of Sandy's disloyalty. And God says in the Psalms 32:8, I shall cause you to have insight and instruct you in the way to go. I hope you enjoy this video. The key to understanding this case is the literature tied to the case, particularly the Crime of Miss Jean Brodie and the Psalms. I hope you enjoyed this video.